It's great to sit down with you a little bit today. We've had a bunch of conversations, but always informally, and it's fun to maybe make this a little bit more structured. So thanks for taking time today.
Hey man, great to be here.
Awesome. Well, you have an awesome origin story for like why you are building Delphi specifically. Tell us about that, and then tell us what Delphi is and what it does.
Yeah, I'll start from the beginning because I feel like this is one of those ideas that, in hindsight at least, you can connect the dots, and it's been following me for a while. So, growing up, I never really had a mentor in my life. You know, my parents immigrated from Iran. And for those of you who have immigrant parents, you may relate to this. They were always like, hey, we figured it out on our own coming to this country. So you should as well. You should learn to be independent, which obviously was a good thing, but always wanted to be able to learn from someone great or have that kind of mentor figure who could guide me through my life. So ended up studying physics and computer science at Georgetown and moving to San Francisco to work at a company called C3 AI. This was before AI was sexy in a way. It was kind of like predictive maintenance, rule-based AI, not LLMs. But it was still cool. You know, we were building AI for government agencies and oil and gas companies. And it was around that time that GPT-3 came out. And everyone on Twitter was just tinkering and creating demos. And it was like, this seems like an entirely new wave of software. I should definitely do something in this space. So I left my job at C3 and started my first company, which was called Friday, and it was an AI assistant for shopping. I was literally sitting on my couch, so lazy one day that I was like, I don't want to have to open up Amazon right now to like refill toilet paper or something. It's like, what if I could just text what I wanted? And then within like an hour, it would just appear at my doorstep. So first world problems, but that's what I built. And you know, you could text a phone number and be like, hey, I need a hoodie. This is my budget. This is my size. And it would show up. And it was during this time that a book on my grandpa came out. And my grandpa was an entrepreneur in Iran before the Iranian Revolution. And the book was about, you know, how he created all these businesses, his business principles. And I was like, it'd be great if I could, you know, talk to him and apply his wisdom to my life. Even though he knows nothing about AI, some of those principles are time tested, they last forever. So I created a clone of him using his book and treated it as my own personal mentor as I built out that startup as a solo founder. And ultimately, the startup got acquired. That idea was like really powerful in my head. It's just like, wow, as a solo founder, this kind of acted as a mentor to me building out this company. And so went to Open Store in Miami where I met my co-founder, and we were reading Build by Tony Fadell. Fantastic book. And I thought the same, like, wow, there's so many lessons in this book that are so useful at certain times in my life. And so we created a Tony Fadell product coach. All of our colleagues started using it. And my co-founder and I went down the idea maze. We left Open Store and started Delphi, which is a digital cloning company that can capture how someone thinks, their personality, what they know, making their knowledge and insights available to others in a personalized way. So that was a lot. I can pause there. Happy to go deeper in any specific area.
No, it's awesome. I don't know if I actually shared this with you, but that story. So my wife's father passed away about a year ago, and with your story about your grandpa, it inspired us to create a Poppy bot to be able to interact with him in a way. And we had texts and phone calls, and um, he did a bunch of articles and stuff like that. So not as prolific as a book, but it was enough to kind of feel a weird connection, even though he had passed away. So, yeah, there's a lot of, I think, like inspiration and scalable lessons that are sort of hidden in books or in people's minds that aren't accessible unless you're lucky enough to kind of have that direct mentorship with them. And the Tony Fadell one is amazing. And I mean, you must have dozens of kind of like different, I don't know what you call it, characters or bots. Like how do you frame the different personalities in Delphi?
Yeah, so I stay away from bots because you know chatbots had their whole wave in 2014 and the association isn't great. I try to stay away
Yeah.
from using AI too because that
Yeah.
focuses a lot on the technology and not enough on like why are we building this? Like what's the point? Sometimes we can be too obsessed with the technology. So I use the word clone now. Is that the best way to phrase it? I don't know. We may change, but we use digital clone right now. And digital clone is meant to capture that this isn't just like regurgitation of knowledge, but it's also capturing of wisdom and reasoning. Because sometimes, I'm not talking to my grandpa and saying, how did you start this company? I'm talking to my grandpa and saying, hey, I'm facing this issue in my life. How would you think about this? And
Yeah.
I don't think that will ever replace the relationship that me and my grandpa had. I don't think it's going to be like Black Mirror where, someone dies and they're going to replace that relationship. It's more so giving you access to the mind of someone you respect and you look up to, and you would like listen to their advice and actually take their advice seriously. Because I think most of the advice out there is bullshit. When you find someone who you really resonate with, it's great to be able to have that on demand.
Yeah. Yeah. Super cool. One of the things I've been so impressed with you all is just the pace and iteration. And we got connected probably a year or so ago. Tell us a little bit about that journey, right? Like obviously there's so many details there. Like you had this rough idea when you were still at Open Store, but like how has your thinking evolved? Like what surprises have you run into technically, consumer wise? Yeah, just fill us in a little bit on that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's one huge lesson to be gained out of all of this is to not take people's advice about what company you should build. Because I think that when I was working on Friday, I thought about raising money, and every VC was like, oh, you can't build on LLMs. That's not going to be an industry. And it's literally same VCs have become AI Twitter influencers. And then when I was starting Friday, and when I started Delphi, all the VCs were saying the most valuable AI companies will be built into workflows like in Slack or in Chrome or in Gmail. Turns out it's super easy for incumbents to build AI workflows into their platforms, and all those startups died off. So I wish, because my initial conviction when I started the company was we should create a platform that lets people clone themselves to scale themselves. That's where we started. We deviated because we listened too much to what people said we should do, and we ended up right back where we started. We started going to, okay, maybe we should just focus on letting consumers get coaching and creating like an all-encompassing coach because people already learn, and it's a substitute for a product. Because cloning is like a weird thing. We're inventing something entirely new. But then I think back to other platform shifts, and I'm sure when YouTube, I don't really remember this, so maybe you remember it, I don't know. When YouTube first started, was everyone posting videos? I don't know. That was a new form of engaging with content. And if YouTube is passive, AI now allows you to have an interactive content platform that allows you to interactively learn with people, learn from people, and engage with their content in a personalized way. So it's going to be hard to create an entirely new kind of market, but that's what we're doing.
Love it. To give people maybe a concrete sense of the product, do you want to do a quick product walkthrough or just kind of talk about it? Like what's the best way to kind of go about it?
I can talk about it because we're about to do a redesign of the product. So I don't necessarily want to show our current designs, but it's about to be so much better.
Perfect.
So I'll talk about it through 2 points of view, the consumer and the creator. So as a creator, I can talk about one of our customers, Illmind. He's a Grammy award-winning music producer who has a big audience of people who like look up to him as a super successful music production guy. And so he created a clone of himself. He passed in his YouTube channel, his podcasts, he connected his Notion. We have a bunch of other integrations. So wherever you have data, we accept it. And our engine kind of converts that into, okay, what does this person know? What are these person's principles? So we can capture their reasoning. What is this person's personality? And then he can make his clone available either through Delphi's custom link, either by putting it on his website, through a phone number that people can text or call. And he can also, if he wants to, which he is doing, monetize his clone for people who really want to have like personalized access to his knowledge. So that's the experience from the creator side. The last part of that is the clone analytics. So there is an analytics dashboard that shows him, hey, these are all the interesting conversations that are happening. These are the topics that people most want of you. And he uses that to kind of plan his future communication and content strategy. One of our users said the clone analytics dashboard was more valuable than Kindle top 10 highlights from him writing his book. So it's just like a more granular data source of understanding, like what are people resonating with and how should I use that to change like the type of information that I provide to my audience.
Super
Uh,
cool. So
yeah,
that feedback loop just gets tighter and tighter, right? So you can't have a
exactly.
conversation with all of your fans, a clone can, and that feeds back up to this dashboard that says, hey, Bloss, whoever, 30% of your fans want to hear you talk about X or asking about X. Make sure you kind of address that. Is that sort of the right way to think of it?
Exactly. Yeah. And there's one more feature to the dashboard. I'm trying to get Keith to try it out. So Keith, obviously, he's one of our lead investors. So many founders want to pitch him. And he will probably say no to most founders. But what he can do with his clone is he can send his clone out to all the founders, and he could have his clone, he can tell his clone, hey, alert me when you find a founder that I would like. And here are like the criteria of founders that I think are interesting, or maybe
Yeah.
ideas. And so he can
Yeah.
get alerted when an
Yeah.
interesting conversation is happening.
Super cool. It strikes me like, this idea that when friction goes to zero, behavior fundamentally changes, right? And like this might be like a silly example, but I heard the Rent the Runway founder kind of talk about this a few years ago, and my wife is a very happy Rent the Runway subscriber. But when all of a sudden these $1,000 dresses, $5,000 dresses are available for $100 a month, along with other things, people start behaving very differently. Like my wife will get a crazy pink dress that she would never otherwise wear because she wants to buy it, and you're not going to buy a crazy pink dress, blah blah blah. But what you're saying here, it kind of like makes me think a little bit that like what in this case is driven because of scarcity or friction, right? Like Keith's time is valuable, and there's obviously like a limit to how much he can do in a day, in a year, whatever. But if this clone can literally talk to every founder and then report back, like, here are the 30 opportunities you should talk to, like, how does that change the game? It's such an interesting kind of like ripple effect of this type of technology.
Yeah, we try to think a lot about how it benefits both sides. It's very obvious how it benefits the consumer side, access to people you normally wouldn't have access to, that you either have to like be in their network, so you have to afford. So that's very obvious. And for Keith, maybe it's a little bit less obvious, but think about maybe how many people that he said no to, that, or like that he didn't decide to have a conversation with, or anyone who's
Yeah.
busy
Yeah.
that might not have time for. And it turns out that might have been the person that takes you to the next level, that returns the fun. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the creator side. The consumer side, which we have been focused on for the past 6 months to make sure that the actual experience of interacting with a clone is good, because then no one's going to want a clone if it's not fun to interact with. My vision there is that, for any goal that you have in life, there's someone out there who has achieved your version of success and who has like that insight that can really unlock your mind and thinking. So if you come to Delphi right now, you like this feature, you can go to Quick Ask and kind of describe your situation, and it'll show you all the people or clones that might have an insight about that situation. And so you can get their answer, and then you can go deeper into a conversation. And, we provide follow-up questions. You can call them. There's a lot of different ways to engage with that content.
Yeah. And you all include resources and stuff like that. But how else can a user feel comfortable? Like, cool, it says Jeff Bezos bot clone says X, but how do I know that's valid? Like, talk us through a little bit about that, like trust building verification exercise. And you guys have been so thoughtful about that. So just share some more on it.
Yeah, citations is a big one. People being able to see, okay, this thing that he said actually relates back to a speech that he gave to Amazon a couple of years ago. Another is, the partnerships. Jeff Bezos, the emails that I found of him doesn't respond. He doesn't respond to me, but ideally we can get to a point where Jeff Bezos owns his clone and he could actually improve it over time and provide like new information that no one has ever heard. So that's another big one. One thing we're working on the engineering side is we have built a lot of guardrails around hallucinations and the clone saying things that the person normally wouldn't say. Obviously, we have some work to do there, but we're working on a confidence score. So you can actually say like, hey,
Cool.
this is the confidence of the response. And then maybe if someone wants to go deeper, like this is actually how the model works.
Super cool. And confidence score calculated how? Like, how do you guys think about that?
Yeah, so it's kind of a subjective score, but we have a couple of different angles. One is relevance to the actual conversation, so like personalization, relevance to the person's life, like is this something the person has done or experienced before? And if not, does this relate to his underlying core principles? And maybe like we're thinking of ways to simulate, okay, if he had said this, does this line up with things he said in the past? It's very hard to score things. It's an unsolved problem in
Yeah,
LLMs
yeah,
right
yeah, 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 totally. All right, so there's two sides to the marketplace, if you will, creator, consumer. Those are broad terms. Like, who is Delphi really for? On the creator side, maybe more obvious. You have a corpus of data, you're accomplished in some vector of life, blah, blah, blah. But maybe there's some nuance there that's helpful. And then on like the user side, besides people looking for mentorship or startup founders who have a lot of questions, like who else would Delphi maybe be for?
Yeah, so I think of the company in phases. And if phase one was like making sure the consumer experience is really good, phase two, which we're at right now, is doubling down on the creators and building a product that they find really useful, that they either want to pay for, or that maybe the benefit for them is increased engagement, driving revenue in different channels. And I can walk you through the different customers that we have now. Coaching is a big one. Coaches use Delphi either as a tool to increase their clientele or as an inbound channel for someone to be like, oh, what is this coach about? And then they can come in and actually book a call. Another is like podcasters and content creators. Hey, explore my content. Find things that you might not have found before. That's just kind of like an addendum to what the podcast has to offer. And then there's like knowledge-based influencers. So like Illmind, the music producer, fitness influencers, health influencers, finance influencers, poker influencers, people who get a lot of inbound questions and can't necessarily answer all those questions. And so their clone can answer on their behalf, either through their link. We're working on some Instagram autoresponders, and people can engage with them in a more personalized way and really have them as like a mentor. Because a lot of these knowledge-based influencers have a large following of super fans. Think of Andrew Huberman. People are religious about him. People will literally do whatever the guy says. And so that's kind of the core group of users. There's two other sects that we're not focusing on as much, but we found interest in. One is politicians, which is pretty obvious. Politicians, want to understand what their constituents want of them, and their constituents want to know, like, what are your policies? Because most of us are pretty uninformed, especially at the local election level. So I think there's a lot to be done on making local politicians more accessible. And then the second is CEOs and executives. Keith at Open Store was in high demand. Everyone wanted to ask him, like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And I think the CEO of any company, his job is to make sure that everyone has the context that he has. So they're acting in accordance with him. So we've seen some interest from CEOs who want to clone themselves for their employees and their companies to access.
Super cool. Really interesting. That going back to like the customer feedback loop on the politician side of things, I hadn't thought of that at all before, right? But it's like, what makes people say, hell yeah, can I learn that faster? How do I like hone that message? And again, like just like rinse and repeat that faster and faster. Super cool. Anything else on that side of things to talk about, or should we switch gears?
Those are the main customers. Like to go over the affordance again. Again, it's really just engaging with your audience at scale. Maybe meeting new people who didn't know your content as much. The analytics is a one that a lot of our customers are interested in, and we're testing around with different monetization channels. One is the paywall that you see Illmind has done. Another is affiliate marketing. So Andrew Huberman, he mentions like Athletic Greens on his podcast, and it makes millions and millions in revenue. So maybe you text his clone like, hey, I'm having trouble sleeping. How should I sleep? And his clone maybe sponsors a brand. He makes a cut of that revenue. So at least everyone kind of benefits from that.
Super cool. Super cool. So you mentioned, I guess talk to us about like the actual form factor, like web versus mobile. You mentioned you can talk. Obviously, text is sort of like the prime thing. Just like walk us through how you think about people interacting with Delphi.
This has been a really hard thing because like at first we were just on Delphi. But I think we're reaching like a landscape in software where there's so much competition and so much like demand for consumer attention that maybe we can get back to the Delphi platform only in the future, but it's to our benefit to be as in as many places as possible. So we can be embedded in someone's website. We have an API, we have an SMS integration, we have a WhatsApp integration, We're adding Instagram, Facebook Messenger, autoresponders. We're really trying to be wherever the user is. So just so they know, hey, this is Delphi, this is Delphi. And eventually, phase 3 of the company, once we get enough creators, we come back to the platform where you can actually find people and be matched with them and be recommended certain experts or coaches or influencers that you might actually like.
Super cool. Where do you start with that phased approach, right? You mentioned, SMS, WhatsApp. Is there like where are most of your people? Are they Twitter users, given like kind of like text heavy stuff, or like I don't know, where do your users currently like spend the most time?
Twitter, definitely Twitter. I mean, Twitter is a form of learning. Like if people who don't like to read books or who aren't patient enough to read books, they go on Twitter for some threads and they get that dopamine rush when they see those 5 tweets that really resonate with them. And as for the creators, Twitter and Instagram. Instagram is definitely huge. A lot of these Instagram creators do these AMAs on their Instagram stories. Like, ask me anything. Oh, when should I wake up in the morning? And then that data goes away forever. So you can imagine this is like 24/7 AMA that can be there whenever for whoever.
Yep. I want to ask about the AI space broadly. But before we do that, is there anything on this that I didn't ask about that you want to make sure we hit on?
I think we hit all the points. I think we have a lot of exciting things coming up for the product, especially for the upcoming election. We're doing some cool things with simulating conversations between candidates. So stay tuned there. Can't talk too much about it, but we'll leave that for another time.
Super cool. Yeah. So, you with C3 AI and, couple journeys from there to here, talk to us about the AI space broadly. What is overhyped? What's underhyped? What have you seen sort of develop? I'd be curious to get your perspective there.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was working on Friday, crypto was really hype. And I almost felt like there was something wrong with me for not going into crypto. I was like, damn, all these people are going to crypto. I'm in AI. Like, what is wrong with me? And now to be in AI when everyone from crypto is going to AI, it starts to be very clear, like, who are the people who are just chasing opportunities and who are the people who are like really motivated by the problem and the thing that they're working on. I think the bar is so low to start a company these days that your only way to stand out is to lean into what makes you passionate. Like, I think that's really the only edge you have, unless like you're OpenAI and have $1 billion to train a model. But even OpenAI, like their model, I think is going to be commoditized pretty soon. And I'm not even sure they're going to have the moat that they have right now. So I think the idea of a technical moat is kind of laughable. And the best kind of moats are user moats and product moats and go-to-market moats if you make the right partnerships. And if you have like 100 people making an AI copywriting tool, it's going to be very hard to build a go-to-market moat, very hard to build a product moat, because how deep can that product be? So I just think if you're thinking about going to the space, like, don't do it for the hype. Do it if it can actually solve something that you're passionate about and that you have maybe some unique interest or insight into. Otherwise, I don't think it's worth it. I think there's a ton of other opportunities right now in other spaces like biotech and space and semiconductors that are a bit harder and non-obvious, but that's probably where you should be if you're not in AI.
Super cool. What can we collectively do to support you? Looking for creators, looking for customers, what type of feedback are you looking for? Like, walk us through how we could try to be useful to you in some way.
Yeah, so like authors, Robert Cialdini, Robert Greene. I've been using the Robert Greene clone like every day. So if anyone knows Robert Greene, I would love to meet him. Creators, influencers, content creators. We just really want to partner with as many people as possible, get as much feedback as possible, and improve the product for them. Because beyond just knowledge dissemination, I think there are a lot of additional products we can layer onto Delphi as a tool that literally scales you and your essence and your skills and your knowledge. But first, we got to get this one thing right, and we got to do it with the right people. And so, fortunately and unfortunately, we're in a business that requires me to get in front of people who are very hard to access, like authors and creators and influencers. So any introductions like that goes a long way.
How do you think about organizations? Like, whatever, let's not take maybe like a tech company per se, but there's a old school community type organization or something, and they have thousands of members from all over the world, and they're not like tech first. Like, are they a creator? They have data, they have people who want to access certain people on the network. Like, I don't know. Like, how would you kind of think about like an organization as a creator, or is that something totally different?
I think that totally works. One of our users, so when you go through our onboarding flow, you can create two kinds of clones. One is a clone based on a person, and one is a clone based on like an ideology or encyclopedic database. And one of our customers, he's a CEO of a company called Keeper AI, and they're a dating company with a very specific ideology on dating. And so they've created a dating coach with the ideology that they believe in as a company. And similar to like a community, they may have like a treasure trove of knowledge that is in line with what that community has learned. And you can kind of create an ideology based clone that keeps that community moving forward. So definitely could be a customer.
Super cool. How any tips in terms of like getting started, right? Like one thing I've been really impressed with is how easy it is to start, right? Like spinning up your own like WhatsApp server, like not that easy, like, and you just kind of like remove a lot of that friction. But in terms of uploading data or any like the principles, the values that you mentioned, um, for someone who hasn't used Delphi before, like what tips would you give somebody new just starting out? Like, is for some reason a website better than a podcast or better than something else? Or just like walk us through a little like best practice scenario here.
It's really funny because we have a position in our company called a master of clone. We've literally hired someone to become the master of creating clones. And we have customers who have hired a master of clone to like understand our platform, how to best create a clone. So it's almost like we're creating this new kind of role. And
Yeah.
what the role is, because this was what I had to do for the first couple months of the company, is like understanding like how someone thinks and how knowledge from a database might affect that person's way of thinking, and how a principle may change how you respond to a specific situation.
Yeah.
We have documentation on all of this, but I think the best way to just figure out the platform is through trial and error. Start with uploading a content that you really believe in, start talking to yourself, see where the gaps are. And something that we allow in platform is you can correct responses in real time. So it gets better over time.
Super cool. Derek, goes without saying, like, I'm a huge fan of you, of Delphi. I've experimented with myself, with our communities, et cetera, and it's really cool to see you grow and improve and all the things you're trying to build. The build something you're passionate about is you, and it's really cool to see you kind of living that out and to be a very small part of that and to be a user in it. It's really cool. Anything at all to kind of cap off this quick little conversation and sort of intro to Delphi before we jump off?
Yeah, it's been great chatting. And I think what the Lattice work is all about, pulling the mental models from these different books and articles, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think part of what Delphi is trying to do is try to make that personalized and like there with you so that you're continuously learning. And yeah. I think that's the best thing you can do as like an entrepreneur, as anyone in a career, is to try to learn from the greats. But the caveat is do not let their advice inform your decision making. Let their advice augment your decision making. It's kind of like the lesson that I learned from earlier this year. VCs gave me advice. What you should do with advice is add it to your knowledge stack and then make a decision for yourself. I think that's the most important thing I've learned.
I love that. And that, yeah, as I've tinkered with it, so much I think is just like verbalizing it and trying to clarify it by writing is like half the battle, 30% of the battle, whatever. It doesn't matter. But like so often you're just stuck on something. And the problem is you don't really know the right question to ask, right? Like the advice is super helpful, but it's almost that like part of like, all right, there's someone I admire on the other side. What is it I'm actually trying to figure out? And like piecing through that is not easy. But like you said, then getting that response and being able to like iteratively work through that is just so powerful, right? And that, yeah, that step-by-step approach has been super cool to see in Delphi. And I'm excited to keep improving with you and kind of seeing where it goes.
Yeah, man. Excited to work together.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you again for your time today. This was really fun.
Cool, man. This is great. See you later.
Yeah.
Bye.